We have Will particularly next. We have lots of other people to bring up real quick, everyone. Again, Marianne, I appreciate answering all the questions, as these are great questions. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have two questions kind of on two different topics. Wonderful, absolutely fantastic to speak to you, Ms. Williamson, and thank you for letting me up, Parker. I really appreciate it. I wanted to touch on two things, and forgive me if they're terribly critical. You said you wanted to talk real, so I just want to really hit the spirit of that and just lay some things real down. Because you call yourself like not anti-capitalist, but then you also criticize the imperialist policies of Russia, and you claim to be anti-imperialist in a series of policies and views. And I want to just hit on a microcosm of that. I don't understand how those concepts can fit comfortably together, right? So specifically on things like land markets, how can we suggest that we should have a free market of stolen land? So I was wondering if you could elucidate us more on how you believe that those ideas can work together, on how we could have a free market on a fundamentally imperialist or imperially founded country and world.
Well, first of all, we don't have a free market. That's the canard. We don't today have a free market. We have a market which is dominated by corporate monopolies. We have a corporate matrix, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, big food companies, big agricultural companies, big chemical companies, gun manufacturers, big oil, banks, and defense contractors. That's not free market capitalism. We have a form of capitalism, a malevolent strain of capitalism. You can call it trickle-down economics, you can call it neoliberalism, you can call it vulture capitalism. It's capitalism having gone off gone off the rails. It's deviated from any moral center. Now, some people say, and this is where the argument is, and I think perhaps you and I would have this debate if we were at dinner. You would say, from what I hear you saying, you'd say, well, capitalism inherently is that. I agree with Richard Wolff. Capitalism is not a light switch. You either have it on or off. It's not like that. Institutions evolve. Institutions transform. And that's what I believe, and I believe in the transformation of a system. And let's not get stuck on words. I mean, if you're going to say, okay, let's end capitalism, and it's kind of like, I'm in a business where I'm a writer, okay? So I have an experience of the upside of what is a free market. I write the book, the publisher publishes it, the consumer buys it. Everybody wins. That's a free market. That's a righteous mark. And it's the high side. It's the high side of capitalism. Everybody wins. Everybody puts in energy and takes energy out. But that is different than corporatism. And that kind of small business upside of free market capitalism is consistently squashed in this country by this behemoth of this corporate matrix. But this corporate matrix of corporate tyrants, and it is tyranny at this point, it is economic tyranny. This is not free market capitalism. Adam Smith, who was the primary architect of free market capitalism, said it cannot exist outside an ethical center. So you and I would definitely agree that the way the economy operates today has no ethical center. It is a soulless form of capitalism, which feels no ethical responsibility to people or to planet or to other species. It sees stockholder value as the primary good. It has led to that $50 trillion of transfer of wealth into the hands of 1 to 10% of Americans. It is tyrannous, and it needs to be repudiated. And that's what I believe is going on with the labor movement being regenerated today, and also with campaigns like mine.
Wonderful. And if I can just one more kind of pushback question on that, quite specifically, right, regarding stolen land and anti-imperialism within America. How can we justly
stolen land as in Native Americans?
Yes, absolutely, like First Nations people.
Okay.
How can we justly engage in any form of free market or any form of capital with land under a capitalist like America while calling ourselves anti-imperialist? Right. I'd love to get a direct answer on the land question.
The imperialism of someone 200 years ago is different than the war machine of imperialism, which is in our generation in such things as the Iraq War. So the answer is what was 200 years ago. I mean, we can make records, but when you talk to Native elders, and I certainly have, there are such things as in 1864, we did sign a treaty saying that the Black Hills of South Dakota would be given back. The Black Hills of South Dakota absolutely should be given back to the Sioux. And you wouldn't be disturbing the government of South Dakota. So maybe it's broken treaties and unfair treaties. But in terms of the fact, I mean, you could look at any country. You could look at any country in the world. Somebody 100 years ago or 200 years ago stole that land.
Understood, absolutely. And I really do appreciate the direct answer. Once again, just setting down real, I do appreciate it. Parker, I have one more topic I want to address, if I can.
You and I could have a good hour-long conversation.
Absolutely. I hold lives as well. You're more than welcome. Sorry to plug myself, but you're more than welcome. Hit me up. But the other question is, I do spend hours and hours of my day, basically every day, just like Parker, just like many people on this live, deconstructing and discussing religion. And one of my biggest concerns about you, Marianne, and as well as quite a lot of people within politics, is the active engagement in spiritual and religious language, at the very least, the language and heuristics of religion, right? I believe you call it the path of Christ, or a conversion to Christ, was a lot of your work and a lot of your discussion. So my question is, how can you earnestly, if you were president, if you are an elected official at all, earnestly engage in what is a fundamentally secular and valuably a secular system, right? That's an incredibly important American value. You reference Gandhi and other social leaders as referencing religious heuristics. That's entirely fine from my book. I think religion and religious heuristics is helpful in social movements. But in terms of earnestly being president, earnestly using the bully pulpit, secularism isn't just in what our laws are, it's also how we make and create them. So I'm just wondering how you would engage in that and how you'd respond to that.
First of all, I refer you to the second inaugural address of Abraham Lincoln. That's number one. I hope that when you get off the phone, you'll go read the second inaugural of Abraham Lincoln, because the whole thing's about the Bible, and Lincoln did okay. That's number one. Number two, you've never heard me in any of my political campaigns use religious language. I am a Jew. So as a Jew, as a religious minority, no one needs to remind me how important it is, our tradition of secular language when it comes to our political dialogue. I'm very clear about that. And you have never heard me in my political speeches, my political talks, anything you heard tonight, I don't throw anything in there because it doesn't belong in there. When you talk about humanitarian values, you can get it all done. You don't have to use religious language. I spoke at a church in Atlanta the other night. Because it was a church, it was a black church in Atlanta, I was totally free, because in the black churches, there hasn't been this division of progressive politics, so you're free. Outside that context, you haven't heard me do it as a candidate, and you would not hear me do it as president. When it comes to the larger issues, however, once again, go read the second inaugural.
Wonderful. Well, I'll get out of here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Will. It was great having you on, man. Thank you so much. All right, let's go on to the next person I have set up here real quick.